When you think about the office, you often imagine a boring, measured life, monotonous keystrokes, phone calls, endless meetings. For most, it's a place where routine consumes everything. But it was different in this office. This was the beginning of a story that shouldn't have happened. From the outside, the building seemed ordinary: glass walls, gray concrete, and a featureless facade. Inside there are spacious open space areas, meeting rooms with soft lights, long corridors with carpeted floors. This place belonged to a large consulting company. Everything looked too perfect. However, as in any place where dozens of strangers are hiding, it is better not to reveal some secrets. Maria joined this company a month ago. It was a step forward in her career for her. She moved to another city, rented a small apartment not far from work, and met her colleagues. Her boss, Mr. Collins, was strict but fair, and her partner Lisa was friendly, if a little annoying. But one feature of the office attracted her attention: the 7th floor. There were several empty offices there. None of the staff went in there. There were scratches on the button on this floor in the elevator, as if someone had tried to erase it. One day, Maria, trying to set up her corporate email, came across a strange letter in the shared archive. The subject of the letter was, "The 7th floor is closed until further notice," and the date of dispatch was 5 years ago. She decided to ask Lisa. "Why is the 7th floor closed?" Maria asked casually at lunch. Lisa froze, her face slightly pale. "It's not for us," she replied evasively. "There are archives." "What kind of archives?" Maria narrowed her eyes. "Doesn't the company store everything in the cloud?" "It doesn't matter," Lisa smiled nervously. "You'd better not go in there." Maria stayed late that evening. The office was quiet. The light reflected dimly in the glass partitions, and a slight hum could be heard from the air conditioners. She decided to go to the 7th floor to finally understand what lies behind the prohibitions. The elevator jerked when she pressed the 7 button. The cabin rose with a sharp creak, and then stopped. The doors opened and she found herself in a long hallway. It was gloomy here, only emergency lighting illuminated the room. The floor was covered with a thick layer of dust, and old posters of the company hung on the walls. One door, slightly ajar, caught her attention. There was a sign on it that read, "Office 712." There were office desks behind the door, stacked with boxes of documents. Maria went inside. There was a folder with documents on the first table. Flipping through it, she found the reports with the seals and surnames of the employees. But one name made her freeze: Mark Henderson. Maria had already seen this name. It often appeared in the internal mail system. But here's the strange thing: no one in the office ever mentioned the brand. In addition, his profile in the corporate database was listed as inactive. The next day, Maria decided to find out who Mark Henderson was. She asked her colleagues, but no one could give a clear answer. Her persistence began to arouse suspicion, and even Mr. Collins advised her not to pursue the matter. "Focus on your work, Maria. We have a lot of tasks that require your attention." But Maria couldn't stop. Something was wrong. She returned to the 7th floor again. This time, she decided to record everything on her phone. This time, she found an old laptop in room 712. It was password protected, but there was a note on the screen. The password is the date of the last meeting on this floor. Back at the office, Maria started looking for that date. In the archive files, she came across an emergency report. The document stated that there had been a serious security breach on the 7th floor, after which the floor was closed. But there was something else: a list of participants in the meeting, among whom Mark Henderson's name was again listed. Turning on her laptop, she discovered an old correspondence. In the messages, employees discussed the dangers of working with confidential data. Someone wrote, "We've gone too deep. This threatens not only the company, but also us." Next, audio recordings. Maria turned on one of them. The conversation was muffled, but there were snatches of phrases. "We can't let it leak. If anyone talks, they're finished. The 7th floor must remain closed." One evening, when Maria was working late again, her phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "You know you're meddling in something else?" a man's voice said. She tried to find out who it was, but the call ended. When she left the building, she noticed that she was being followed. Darkness enveloped the parking lot, but Maria clearly saw someone's shadow. There was another surprise waiting for her at home. There was a box on the doorstep of the apartment. There are photos inside. She was in every one of them, near the office, on the 7th floor, even in the parking lot. The last photo was the most frightening, of her sleeping in her bed. Maria decided to report this to the police. But the next day, when she came to the office, Mr. Collins called her into the office. "Maria," he began, looking at her carefully, "you have violated the rules of the company. We have to terminate the contract with you." She realized that it was no accident. Maria walked out of Mr. Collins' office, feeling her heart pounding in her throat. Everything inside turned upside down. The termination of the contract looked like an attempt to shut her up, get her out of the way. She picked up her things, avoiding eye contact with her colleagues, who were whispering behind her back. In the parking lot, as she was putting a box of documents in the trunk, she noticed something amiss. Her car was covered in a thin layer of dust, as if it hadn't been touched in a long time. It was strange, she had definitely washed it in the morning. But what bothered her most was the word written with her finger on the dirty glass of the trunk. "That's enough." Maria quickly got into the car and started the engine. She felt trapped. Her thoughts were racing, and her hands were shaking. She looked around, but there was no one there. Just an empty parking lot, flooded with yellow lights. In the evening, sitting at home with a glass of wine, she tried to calm down. But every shadow outside the window seemed suspicious. Every rustle made her turn around. The phone rang again. The number was unfamiliar, but she answered anyway. "It won't stop, Maria," the voice was cold and quiet. "You know too much." She tried to say something, but the phone was silent. The call ended. Maria started searching the internet for everything she could find about the 7th floor, the company, and Mark Henderson. It turned out that the company had already had a scandal 5 years ago, but the information was carefully hidden. Several employees disappeared, but the cases were hushed up, and there was no public investigation. One name came up in her search, a security guard who was working at the time. His name was George Wilson, and he was the only one who gave a comment to the press. He mentioned something about a strange, sealed room and informal meetings. The next day, Maria found George. He lived in a small trailer on the outskirts of the city. After knocking on the door, she heard someone slowly approach her. The door opened, and an elderly man with a frightened look appeared on the threshold. "Who are you?" "What is it?" he asked hoarsely. "My name is Maria. I worked for the company where you were a security guard. I need to know about the 7th floor." George paled and waved her in. "You have no idea what you did when you got in there," he began, sitting down opposite her. "This place was closed for a reason." People were silenced. Maria tried to get more details, but George spoke flowerily, as if he was afraid to say too much. The only thing she understood was that experiments were being conducted with employees on the 7th floor. No one knew exactly what was going on, but many people had disappeared. "I saw one of them being carried out," he finally confessed. "He had eyes, empty ones. It's like there's nothing left inside." These words made Maria go cold. Returning home, she noticed that she was being watched again. At the intersection, in the reflection of the rearview mirror, she saw a black sedan. The car followed her all the way to her apartment. When she entered the entrance, there was a note on the apartment door. "Do you think you have somewhere to run to?" At that moment, she was seized with animal fear. She called the police, but their response was cold. "We don't have enough grounds to file a case, ma'am." Maria felt despair rising in her throat. She couldn't sleep at night. Lying in bed, she listened to every rustle. It was too quiet. Suddenly, she heard a light knock on the window. When she got up, she pulled back the curtains, but saw no one. When she returned to bed, she noticed that the bedroom door was slightly ajar. She could have sworn she was closing it. When she turned on the light, her heart started pounding like crazy. On the wall, directly in front of the bed, someone had written, "You're next." Maria slowly sank to the floor, panting. She realized that she was left all alone. Her disappearance was not an event. Her colleagues simply decided that she had left because she couldn't stand the stress. The 7th floor remained closed. A few months later, a new employee, Anna, joined the office. One day, while working late, she noticed that the scratch on the 7 button appeared on the elevator again. Anna hesitated for a long time to press the 7 button. She was new to the office and had only heard snatches of strange conversations about the fact that the 7th floor had been closed for a long time. It was said that this was related to the renovation, but the tone of the colleagues betrayed alarm, as if no one wanted to discuss this floor. One day, when she stayed late at work, the elevator, as if of its own accord, stopped on the 7th floor. Anna froze. The elevator doors didn't open immediately, but she felt something change in the air. It became difficult to breathe, as if the space was filled with invisible tension. When the doors finally opened, darkness appeared in front of her. Only the dim light of the emergency lamp illuminated an empty corridor full of dust. Anna stepped back, about to press the door closure button, but she heard a voice behind her. "You wanted to know the truth, didn't you?" She turned around, but there was no one in the elevator. For several days, Anna tried to put the incident out of her mind. She told herself that it was a dream or a hallucination due to overwork. But thoughts of the 7th floor wouldn't let her go. In every conversation with her colleagues, she caught hints that everyone here knew more than they wanted to admit. She had a lot of questions, especially for Liam, an employee from the IT department. Liam was attentive to details. His job required him to notice everything. Anna decided to talk to him, hoping that he would be able to shed some light on what was happening. 7th floor. "What is it?" he asked when she started talking over coffee. His face darkened. "It's better not to go there." "I'm serious." "Why? What's the big deal?" Anna insisted. "Just trust me." Liam lowered his gaze. "This place, it breaks people down." Anna felt her insides go cold. She couldn't understand why she was so drawn to this place, as if something inside was pushing her to search. That evening, Liam came over to her desk, clearly worried about something. "I didn't want to tell you, but if you're going to climb anyway, it's better to know what you're dealing with." He handed her the flash drive. "There are camera recordings here. Look at their houses. Just don't do it in the office." At home, Anna turned on the flash drive. There were several video files on it. The cameras installed on the 7th floor filmed strange things. People went there, but did not return. The last video was particularly frightening. It showed a woman dressed in a formal suit walking slowly down the corridor of the 7th floor. She stopped in front of the door at the end of the hallway and looked directly into the camera. Her face was calm, but there was panic in her eyes. She whispered something, but there was no sound. Then she opened the door and went inside. The camera recorded the door slamming shut, and the light in the hallway flickered and went out. Anna realized that it was Maria, the employee, and no one else was talking about. The next day, Anna couldn't stand it. She stayed late again, but now she had a purpose. She decided that she had to see the 7th floor with her own eyes. Before that, she tried to talk to Liam, but he avoided her. Gathering up her courage, she went to the elevator. The 7 button was on the scoreboard, even though she hadn't pressed it. It seemed strange to her, but she went inside anyway. When the doors opened, a cold wind greeted her. The hallway was empty, but something about the atmosphere made her shiver. She headed for the door at the end of the hallway, the one she'd seen on the tape. The door was ajar. Behind it was a room filled with papers, folders, and monitors. In the center was a large metal table, on which lay a sealed envelope. Anna took it and opened it. There was a photo inside. It showed her standing in front of the door on the 7th floor. There was a text on the back of the photo. "You knew it would end like this." Anna felt the ground give out from under her feet. At that moment, the light in the room went out. She heard footsteps behind her. "I told you this place breaks people down," Liam's voice rang out. He stood in the doorway with a cold expression on his face. "Why are you here?" "What is it?" she asked softly. "I tried to stop you. But you came here anyway. Now you have no choice." Liam stepped forward, and Anna noticed that he had a knife in his hand. "Liam, wait. Stop it," she screamed, backing away. "We can discuss everything." "Discuss it?" He smiled bitterly. "This is not a place for discussion. This is the place where they decide who will leave and who will stay." He rushed at her, but Anna managed to grab a metal pipe lying on the table and fight back. They fought until she managed to run out of the room. However, the corridor seemed to have changed, the doors disappeared, the walls narrowed. She raced forward until she fell into the darkness. The office reopened a few weeks later. No one talked about Anna, and the 7th floor became a myth again. But now they sometimes heard strange noises there. And so the new employee, named Jack, stayed late. The elevator opened on the 7th floor. And Jack, not understanding what was happening, stepped inside. Jack stepped into the elevator, and the doors closed behind him. The cabin moved gently upward, but when the scoreboard blinked and flashed the number 7, he frowned. After all, he didn't press that button. When the doors opened, he was greeted by a dark, gloomy hallway. The faint glow of an emergency lamp flickered faintly in the distance. Jack cautiously took a few steps forward, but the feeling of anxiety was literally suffocating him. He looked back to make sure the elevator was still in place. The doors remained open, but there was a strangely dim light inside. "Is anyone there?" "Stop it," he called, but his voice sounded muffled, as if the corridor was absorbing the sounds. It seemed to him that someone had slipped aside in the distance, but it could have been just a trick of his eyes. However, he noticed something under his feet. Paper. Jack bent down and picked up the paper. It was a picture of a girl with long dark hair standing in the same hallway. On the back was written, "You're next." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. He turned around abruptly and saw that the elevator had closed the doors. Panic began to overwhelm him, but he forced himself to take a deep breath. "It's just someone's stupid prank," he thought, even though his heart was pounding. He continued down the hall. As he approached the dim light, it began to seem to him that the corridor was getting narrower. The air became denser, heavier. When he reached the end, he saw the door slightly ajar. "Hey, who's there?" "Stop it," he called again, his voice trembling. Jack pushed the door open. The room was a mess, scattered papers, folders, overturned chairs. There was a large metal table in the center of the room, and there was a photograph on it. He came closer and saw myself. The photo showed him standing at the elevator door. He felt panic coming over him. Turning abruptly, he rushed to the exit, but the door through which he entered slammed shut with a deafening crash. Jack tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. At that moment, heavy footsteps sounded behind him. He turned around and saw a shadow. At first it seemed to be just a silhouette, but then Jack made out a man in a gray suit. His face was hidden in shadow, but Jack noticed a knife in his hand. "Who are you? What do you want?" Jack shouted, backing away. The man didn't say anything. He only slowly approached closer and closer until he was within arm's reach. Jack darted to the side, trying to grab something for protection, but the man was faster. The knife flashed in the dim light, and the cold steel pierced Jack's side. He fell to the floor, clutching at the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. The man bent over him, but said nothing. His eyes finally became distinguishable, empty, indifferent, as if he had been deprived of emotions for a long time. Jack tried to get up, but his legs wouldn't obey him. The last thing he heard was the sound of footsteps retreating. Then the corridor fell silent. The next day, the office was full of people again. No one noticed Jack's disappearance. The staff continued to work as if nothing had happened. A sign appeared on the elevator: "Floor 7 is closed. Please do not use it." No one asked any unnecessary questions. The new employee, Sarah, just got a job a couple of days ago. In the evening, after lingering for reports, she went to the elevator. As soon as the doors opened, the scoreboard flashed and the number 7 appeared. Sarah smiled, thinking it was just a glitch. "Well, let's see what's in there," she muttered and stepped inside. The elevator started moving.